Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk ETC. I have two guests with me developing an Ethereum Classic application, Mike Ski and Aaron Lowry of Ethernode, and they're going to tell us about their initiative. So welcome, Mike and Aaron.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Likewise. Thanks as well.
All right.
Pleasure to be here.
So we were talking a little before the show, and it sounds like you guys have a lot of technical experience, but why don't you kind of introduce yourselves to the audience? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure, I'll start it off. I'm Aaron Lowry. I have a background primarily in business management administration with a lot of experience in startup companies. And about 7 years ago, I co-founded a company doing vehicle tracking systems, originally mostly enterprise, and then we began developing some consumer solutions. And Mike came on board about a year into that project when one of the original founders departed. And so we've been working together on that system for about 6 years now. And a couple years back, we started to look for more information about new technologies that we could incorporate in the next generation of our IoT platform. And we were coming from a situation where we dealt with a lot of dynamics between network service providers and hardware manufacturers, and we were constantly being forced to conform or update to new standards. And so we were looking for new solutions.
3G, so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And always looking to provide a good, solid value proposition for the customer at the end of the day, and needing something that was, had some a longer lifespan. And so we were doing some research into multi-hop mesh networking technology and came across blockchain, which we'd known of in from a distance for probably since its inception, but hadn't really dabbled with too much, and we'd stayed out of cryptocurrency for the most part. And so we began to do a bunch of research on blockchain, and really for probably 6 or 8 months went on a pretty interesting deep dive technologically, and learned just a tremendous amount. And we started with Bitcoin, and then looked into Ethereum and some of the other networks. And we eventually kind of landed here in Ethereum Classic community based on the ideals and principles upheld by Ethereum Classic for immutability and censorship resistance and decentralization, which are really challenging concepts to scale, but we think worth the effort. So as we learned more the state of the network and the technology, again with the idea of how can we build and deploy them and do it economically and and viably and utilize this technology, we recognize that a number of improvements that could and needed to be made to address scalability and numerous other issues. But one of them primarily came into our wheelhouse, which was just make it easier to connect developers and reduce the threshold for onboarding into DApp
developing on
blockchain.
Yeah, exactly.
So we began to kind of analyze the whole environment and look at places where we thought we could fit in without recreating things that were already being developed by current dev teams, IOHK, ETC Dev at the time, and even back then Commonwealth. And so we were
Parity, one of them as well.
Parity also, yeah. So trying to figure out where we could fit in and provide some value and help grow Ethereum Classic as a network, and also build some infrastructure components that would allow ourselves and others to really begin developing products that could be scaled and taken to market. So we focused on node hosting as a solution to initially help bring developers easier access to the blockchain connectivity element of it, providing an easy interface to go online, click a button, host a node, utilize a unique RPC API endpoint.
You get a unique link to your node that's got an RPC endpoint open for it, and plug it into your D app and start writing your code away without worrying about the node and how you're going to access the blockchain or gather information from it or make any transactions on it or whatnot. So started off with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think there's a need for that. Like I host a node in the cloud with Amazon Web Services, and yeah, it could be kind of a pain. You have to, you need a lot of storage compared to download the blockchain and then you have to keep it up always if you want to access it. Anyways, yeah, it could be kind of annoying to have to set up your own node. So service to do that for a developer, yes, I could see where that would be needed.
Right, and not a lot of developers really like messing around in terminal. I mean, they're coders, they understand, and there's definitely coders out there that believe that you shouldn't, if you can't run your IDE in terminal, you shouldn't be using it and whatnot. But the truth of the being is a lot of entry level developers, they don't want to have that Linux experience and use terminal to spin up a node and download the software, and a lot of times even maybe compile it if you have to and whatnot. So we give them that solution that we'll do all the background work for you. Here's a link. Go build your next great D app.
Right. And so Mike, we learned a little bit about Aaron. Why don't you kind of give a little bit of your background?
All right. So computers have always kind of been my passion ever since I can honestly remember, about 5-10 years old already. I've always been bigger into hardware and how it works, and always interested me is like, okay, there's all this software, there's all these games and whatnot, and here's this piece of hardware, but how do these games run on that hardware and why, So my always kind of just throughout school and whatnot, always just been nose stuck in the monitor, and started with Perl, then went to PHP a little bit, and PHP I started doing JavaScript as well when Web 2.0 came around and the whole REST API economy blew up. And just recently, like Aaron said, we built this IoT background solution for like theft and prevention, where people can buy and automated the whole system and whatnot. And we started looking what's next and greatest, right? With, understanding that, internet in the future and how it's being controlled, and ISPs and what Aaron said, jump through the hoops with this and that. We realized that blockchain is a great place to start to build these distributed IoT solutions, and also maybe, in the future, we'll look into some mesh networking technologies where you're not relying 100% on your ISP or 100% on T-Mobile or that 2G, 3G, 4G LTE connection, And so kind of, as we started doing the research, as Aaron said, we looked into IOTA and whatnot, but migrated really into ETC because, well, first of all, its core values to decentralization, and the distributed network, and also because it not only allows you to build IoT, the whole network allows you to build other applications and solutions for everyday life, and I think
can I ask you why you felt that mesh networking might be useful? Are you imagining like cars on a freeway, a fleet of cars communicating with each other?
Well, so one of the projects we're working on right now is called NOS. And basically what it is we're taking what Ethernode.io does online, where you can go and you use our backend to spin up your nodes and everything. We're taking that whole idea and we're building a whole infrastructure and building a whole Linux distribution with a web-based interface that lets you do what you do with us, but you can run that Linux distribution on a single board computer like a Raspberry Pi or a Rock 64. We'll have specific specifications, but it'll run, we'll create images for VirtualBox on your Windows computer as well. But basically it gives you the same interface you have, but now you're taking the nodes and you're spinning them up on your own hardware, further decentralizing the network and further being able to build your D app on top of that, knowing that you have that support. Now, my idea, and in my brain, that what a true D app really is if a developer creates piece of source code, and that source code and the whole application runs off the device that it's on. And the user has the option to connect to their own local node, for instance, to interact with the blockchain, with the information and back and forth, because the DApp developer gives them that option. And now you're literally running everything on the inside network and whatnot, and completely decentralizing the use of your DApp, right? So that's the idea with that.
Okay, so I think I understand. So with IoT, you need to obviously communicate between nodes, but you don't really need the internet to do that, right? You have a blockchain application, and
yes.
So that's the idea. You don't need the internet full stack.
No, you basically want to use the blockchain network of nodes to, for instance, send your messages over the blockchain network to whatever another node. There's several great protocols actually built into the Ethereum blockchain that you can use to send messages encrypted messages between 2 points and whatnot. And we're experimenting with some of those as well. But yeah, my biggest thing is using the ETC network of nodes and whatnot to be able to run my communications between point A and point B. Take an edge device and send some information to point B, and then have a front end interface that picks that information out of point B and displays it.
Right. Good. Yeah, I remember talking with somebody from Qualcomm. They're a cell phone company. They design hardware for Android phones, and one idea they had was, so when you're flying across an ocean, it would be nice to have internet, but they don't have good internet, obviously, in the middle of the Atlantic. And they were working on where the planes would communicate, right? So you have all the planes travel on some channel across the ocean, but if you could have a mesh network, and then you could send your web traffic, hop a couple of planes to get to the continent. So I thought that was a brilliant idea, how to bring the internet to places that don't normally have it. Kind of
exactly it. Mm-hmm.
And blockchain is a good technology to affect that. That's essentially, what we do when we take two single board computers and we run ENOS on them, and they communicate back and forth. You can do it without any sort of external connection at all, and still utilize that, or have one with an external connection and have an unlimited number of them communicating, amongst themselves on a mesh network.
Mesh network, peer-to-peer connections, right?
Right. So you guys have your IoT plans, your theft prevention application, and so tell us about how you got involved with ETC Labs and how that's been working with them.
Sure. So we were, I would say, one of our first experiences with developing within the community early in 2018 or late 2017. We did a couple of projects with ETC Co-op and helped rebuild the Block Explorer for them and some stuff like that. And we initially submitted a community proposal in March for some funding to develop the ENOS node hosting software, and it got a lot of interest. But it was around the same times that Ethereum Classic Labs or ETC Labs was first introduced, and so we were kind of, I guess, a little bit encouraged by Anthony to look in that direction, and we submitted sort of a rough proposal to them and began some follow-up conversation. And then we went up there in October for their launch event and met the staff up there, and it's been a really good experience. We're really excited to be there working with them. There's a lot of really interesting, high quality projects going on there, and it's fun to be a part of.
So you guys are in San Francisco right now, is that right?
Yeah. So currently, I am in San Francisco, actually talking out of the ETC Labs office right now, and Aaron is in San Diego at this point, but coming down tomorrow.
Office in San Diego. I'll be back up there soon.
So I'm just imagining ETC Labs being this like high-powered place with all kinds of smart people
super high energy place. Lots of amazing ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun place to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. So then why don't you kind of talk a little bit more in detail then about Ethernode? What's going on there?
Well, from I guess as a broad overview, Ethernode, the company, is kind of developing primarily the ENOS piece of software, but then the services connected with that are the online node hosting services, and then we're right now doing some development on a line of hardware nodes that'll be available hopefully in Q2.
Yeah, with ENOS, pre-installed on them already. So order one of them, come home, hook it up to your network, look at the LCD screen. It'll pop up its internal IP address, fire up a web browser, either on your phone or your computer, connect to the IP address, be displayed with a dashboard, and spin up a node. Once you do that, you have a little ID built into it, and little block explorer, whatever else.
So blockchain in a box, or ETC in a box, plug and play, right? Hardware.
Yeah, it's designed to be a very flexible user interface. The software itself actually is more like an SDK or an API. Okay. So the interface itself is highly flexible, but it really allows you to perform direct connected.
Yeah.
A local connection with your node, so that you're really eliminating any trusted third parties in your blockchain experience. So any applications built upon it or utilizing the API and SDK, they connect directly through the node. So the developer or the user has really no point of third party interference between their
or let's just say
blockchain.
Let's just say you're just a user and you have no interest in developing or anything, right? But, a DApp developer creating an application and they say, hey, you can use our public nodes to connect to interact, to use our DApp and interact with. But just so you know, you could pick up a piece of hardware from Ethernode that's a plug and play and plug this into your network, like I said, but instead of this time using the IP address to start making calls to it, you take that and you plug it into your DApp. And now you're using your DApp, like we talked a little bit earlier, directly at home with no crazy setups or nothing.
Right. So you have two options. Then you could buy the hardware or connect to your, I guess, is it a cloud service?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yes.
And then the software will be the ENOS based software will be free and open source. So you can also just download it and host a node on your own hardware. An old PC, put it on an EVM. You can self-host it in a cloud server. Put it on a single board computer.
Okay, interesting, cool. So that's certainly something useful for the community, especially people that want to get up and running fast and not be bothered with it, maybe the certain details when they want to focus on writing smart contracts. And so what are your kind of future plans? Where do you see Ethernode in 1, 5 to whatever years? What have you got plans?
Well, like I mentioned before, we will be branching into IoT, developing our own IoT platform, based on ENOS, and that'll include some projects that we already have in mind for products that we've specifically wanted to build, and also some opportunities to provide some enterprise services in developing those types of projects. We're also looking to expand into like enterprise node hosting solutions for companies that are interested in running large scale distributed applications with need multiple points of connection with a lot of dynamic load balancing.
Failovers, whatever.
Robust IPFS data backends, and developing some of those solutions. So that's our main focus right now. and I think it's probably enough to keep us busy for a couple of years.
Right. Good. So yes, maybe we'll have to have you on a future show when you get farther along with your IoT plans.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
All right. So I think we've got a pretty good overview of Ethernode and so you guys are strong in software and hardware with the focus on IoT. So have we covered everything? Did we forget to cover anything about Ethernode yet?
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think, like Aaron said, I mean, it seems a little, we got probably enough to do, for the next couple of years, easy.
Okay, very good. All right, well, thank you, Aaron and Mike, for explaining that to us, and I wish you well with all your projects.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.